Welcome to EDC Journeys. If you like what you see, like and subscribe. Much more to come. What's going on, EDC people, and what's our journey today? Well, we're going to review the Bestech Warwolf. A really cool looking design with great action. And so, like usual, I'll start with the stats. The blade thickness at the stock is 3.5 millimeters, which is about 0.15 inches. I'm going to typically stick with millimeters, though, just so you know, as a form of measurement. The blade material is a D2, which is fine. You know, a lot of people are sick of D2, but it depends on the company, depends on the heat treat, depends on a lot of things. And as far as I can recall from Love Them Knives, Bestech's D2 tests well and is in like the 59 to 61 HRC range. I could be wrong on the Hardwell, or the Rockwell, but I believe it tested you know, good as D2. In fact, I'm sure of it. The blade length is 90 millimeters, and that's the cutting length. The overall length is 208 millimeters. It weighs, well, they claim it weighs 133.5 grams. When I weigh it, I get about 128, 129. Not a big difference. Doesn't really matter. Let's see here. On the plunge, I can zoom, maybe, let me try to zoom in a little bit here. Yeah, it seems a little bit thick to me. You know, at the plunge, at the thickest part of the plunge there, or whatever that part would be called, is about 3.3 millimeters at the thickest. It is a flat grind. It is obviously harpoon style, which is very cool, and I'm putting my fingerprints all over this blade that I just wiped down. It's a flat grind with a high top flat. Again, I believe that's what they call it. It's got this harpoon swedge, which is super cool. I think I'm still zoomed in. There we go. It's got, let's see, yeah, it's got great action. Like I said, it runs on bearings. Sorry about that. It does have a flat grind, like I said, but it has decent depth. About 24 millimeters is what I measured from the top of the harpoon to the apex. So, you know, as far as blade geometry goes, you know, I'm not a professional in that sense, but I can tell you that it slices pretty good. I happen to have an example right here. I mean, this is very minimal effort. So obviously the edge is sharp coming from NeevesKnives, but it's clearly, that was a weird angle. It's clearly very sharp and works very well for slicing. The choil actually kind of reminds me, I was just trying to show you it, it kind of reminds me of the Kershaw Trace I did a review of just the other day. Let me get all this out of the way real quick. Yeah, it reminds me of the Kershaw Trace I did the other day. Let me try to I'm going to zoom in and try to show you both at the same time, if that's possible. The Warwolf definitely comes to a thinner end here. You know, like as in this one's more stubby right up until the apex, or whatever the term would be called, the ricasso maybe. But it just reminded me of it, so I wanted to show you that. Next up, we'll do a few comparisons, just so that you can see some perspective. So here it is up against, here's what I'll do. I'll put the end of the handle right up at the edge of the thing I'm using here, which is a brick. This is a pair of 3. So you could tell it is obviously much longer. The blade is much longer. It doesn't really compare in that sense. It does have kind of that arced top, but we'll talk about that later. But that's just for size reference. Here it is against an Elementum. Again, so much longer blade. There is really no belly on the Bestech. It's really very much a harpoon, which would make sense. One more. Here it is against my copy. It's the brother 1601, but my copy of the Mannix. Now, if you look, somehow I'm going to show you this. The blades. Wow, it looks so strange when you're on camera and versus. Okay, so the blades are actually very similar in length. Obviously, the belly up here on the Mannix is what's very different, but the cutting edge is nearly identically the same length. The handle is very different in length. Okay. So, let's talk about the ergos on it. It's black G10 for a handle material. It's got steel liners, and it's a liner lock, obviously. It's got a black G10 material. It's as far as I'm concerned, it's a very grippy G10. It has this contouring, if you can see that, right around the edges here, and then it has like a flat middle on both sides. It's the same thing. And because of that, it makes the feel of it, it almost feels like it swells in your hand. It's the same size all the way across at its flat part. Let's see, 15.3 millimeters, 15.4 millimeters. If I can get to the thing, 15.4. So yeah, so from the flat spot on one side to the flat spot on the other side of the handles of the scales, it's the same. But because of that contouring, not only is it comfortable, not only do you have a good access to the lock bar, it feels like it swells in your palm, which really makes a huge difference when you're gripping. And I've mentioned before, I appreciate on the harpoon that there's no jimping here. I like on a harpoon to be able to choose where to put my thumb and not have any sharp jimping or anything like that. When I'm really digging in, obviously I go right up to the harpoon and just dig. Now, the choil is a sharpening choil. It's obviously not a finger choil. You're not going to get your finger in there. It looks like it could be sharpened many more times before you'd have any problems. Now let's talk about the thumb stud a little bit. It stands proud, I can tell you that. Really proud. There's no jimping on it either. Not that there needs to be, because it's so big. Because of its size, you can either push it or flick it like a light switch. In either way, it's going to deploy. The only way that I can do it, or I can flick it without it, the only way to make it fail is to try. Okay, I can intentionally make it fail just because of how big the flipper tab is, as well as the flipper tab being just a little below the pivot, so you have a little bit more control of. Well, see, that was an attempt and a fail. Failed attempt and a fail. You see, if that were a little higher, it would have a little bit more leverage, and then there would be no way I could fail it. As far as the tallness of the thumb stud goes, I'm not a knife designer, so I don't know if it was necessary for some reason. I can tell you that the action and sound on this knife is awesome. So, if that's what it takes to do that, maybe that's what it takes. But it's definitely what people would call a pocket pecker. When this is in your pocket, this thing is going to be hitting anything that's in your pocket, and it's hopefully not your phone. While we're on this side, we can talk about the clip. Clip is a stainless steel. It's kind of, it's very springy. It's very long. It's pretty much deep carry, semi deep carry, I guess you would say. It doesn't do that like curl around thing like, something like this would. But it is nice and long, so it's definitely not going to fall out of your pocket. The landing zone on the clip is on, you know, the proud part of the G10. And like I told you before, this is, to me, some pretty rough G10. Like, for example, compared to the Para 3. The Para 3 G10 is, to me, far smoother. This is like, I don't know if you can hear it. I don't know if that makes any difference to you, but so my point is that it's definitely I believe it's a pocket eater. You know, until that spring loosens up a little bit, but that's okay. You know, for the knife, it's worth it for this knife. This knife is an awesome knife. Now on the top, you kind of, on the where the flipper is, you kind of have a semi landing zone. So you flip, and you've got this little part here where, you know, where again there's no jimping, which I totally appreciate, because there's not going to be any problems when you land. So that you got that kind of like downward part that looks, you know, again, just the aesthetics with the harpoon kind of looks cool. And then it goes to this rounded back end, so it fits just nicely. On the other side, it does have the, kind of like the finger spots already made up, and this is, I believe, the only place there's jimping. And I think that that's just so you, if you wanted to get your pinky there to like really do something, maybe it's a, you know, feather stick or whatever that's called. But usually I don't like when you have places that you are basically designed to put your fingers. I usually like a neutral blade, as I've heard it called, where you can, you know, something like this, where, yeah, it's shaped, but you can pretty much put your fingers wherever you want, and that's up to you. Whereas on this one, you know, you're pretty well locked in to, you know, you can move your thumb around, but you're not really going to be moving your fingers around too much. There's no reason to go back here, and you're certainly not going to go further than that thumb stud, or I always call it that flipper tab. Now, the one good thing about the tall flipper tab is it acts as a really safe finger choil. You know, you're not going to go ahead of it, you're not going to slip over it, and yeah. But look at that action, and listen to it. Oh my god, for a, I think it's something like maybe $80, $90, if you can find it. It's definitely worth that, I can tell you. The blade is centered perfectly. You know, and really that's most of what I have to say as far as the stats go. It is 24. I measured just for the fun of it. You see where the flat is, where the harpoon is. There's the flat. That's where the flat grind starts. I measured from there to the apex, and I got 24 millimeters. And just for kicks, I did on the trace because it reminded me of it so much. The trace, I did it from, you know, around here, from the flat to the apex. I got 26 millimeters. So it is, the trace does have a couple millimeters longer to of depth, cutting depth. So, you know, as far as geometry goes, I'm not sure what numbers quite make sense yet. I'm still a little bit new to that, but in use, it's perfect. I mean, I've got this little stack of cardboard here so I can show you. I was going to do a whole bunch, but I don't think there's much point. It just, I mean, it's very, very slicey. You're going to have no problem cutting whatever you need to cut. Oh, look at that. I got tapey stuff all over the knife. Anyways, I got to clean that. I can't take it. Yes, this is my Star Wars Hank, always on me. And it's not cleaning it. Okay, well, whatever. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for this knife. I used it quite a bit. I took some great photos with it. I cleared a lot of old, you know, I have these flowers that grow and then they die, and they have these like gray hollow stems. I used it a lot on those just to clear it out. It was easy as pie. You know, it's a sharp knife, it's a good knife, it's good looking, it's a good price for what you're getting. Yeah, that's it. That's the Bestech Warwolf. Let me give you some close-ups here, now that I've got it all messy. You can see the skeletonized liner locks. And whatever the like barrel spacers or whatever. I believe I already told you it's on bearings, which makes sense because it is very smooth. And again, guys, if you didn't know the tip, I'm sure everyone knows this, and I'm just new to this. Canned air, blow out your not your bearings, your bearings, your ball bearings. Blow out your ball bearings without any disassembly, and you'll be surprised how much cleaner and how much smoother your blade will be. But this one came from NeevesKnives. This is one of the 4 that he let me borrow to show you guys, and it just it had great action right from the get-go. If I wasn't wrapped around a tripod right now, I wouldn't have to wiggle it whatsoever. I mean, it would just drop. So, yeah, let me get a close-up of the G10 for you. I believe those are Torx T6. I have absolutely no idea what that pivot is, you know, what the deal is with that pivot, but it looks cool. T8 and T6s again. Okay, so if you're looking for a harpoon blade, if you're looking for a work knife, if you're looking for, you know, the black G10 will keep your hands, if you know, if you work in a cold environment. Well, you might, the steel liners on top might be a little bit cold, but the black G10 will help with the cold, just like my Micarta does. You've got a real solid work knife in the Bestech Warwolf. Thumbs up from me. Have a great day, guys. All right, guys, there's one thing I forgot to show you a little more clearly. Well, 2 things. One thing, I want to slice a little bit more of that cardboard just to show you just how easy it is to get through even longer pieces. I mean, it's just, this is all kind of wrinkled, so it's a little strange to get started, but once you do, it just slides right through. Okay, and then you saw me play with it the whole time, but I had to mention the fidget factor is there for this guy, okay? Because of those bearings, because of the blade, because of the weight, I play with it all the time. So that's the Bestech Warwolf. Hey, if you stuck around this long, give it a thumbs up. If you like what you see, subscribe. And I want to give a very special thanks to NeevesKnives for loaning me these knives and for my logo.